These are the voices that make Missouri work. This is Profiles from the Heartlander.
Lieutenant Governor, welcome to the Heartlander.
Great. Thank you for having me on.
It is a real pleasure to have you as you have been traveling. We were talking before this conversation. You've been traveling a lot, logging a lot of miles.
It's a big state, and Missourians really like when you come to them and you get in their backyard or their business or their farm, their community, and really address them eye to eye. That's the kind of person I am. I really like building relationships, and it's been invigorating.
You've now seen most of the state through your personal travels and your time as Lieutenant Governor. Do you see a difference between maybe the central part of the state to the north to the south? Are there big differences in Missourians and their concerns?
Well, I think the common piece that there's a similarity is that they're hardworking, Christian family values, conservative people. I think that's the common thread across the state in all 114 counties. The personality differences are very much there. You know, southeast Missouri is very more southern approach in a very kind and good way, but very different maybe than other parts of the state who have maybe a different approach and terrain. In southwest Missouri, you're more in the rolling hills. It's more cattle country, so you kind of have the cattle producers. And when you get to southeast Missouri, it's more flatland farms, et cetera. So you have more of the row crop people. And so those are the personality differences, but the similarities are very much there.
The state of Missouri, in your view, for folks that would look at it as perhaps a place to come live or a place to come work, why would people come to Missouri?
Well, I think work ethic and the quality of life is significant here. We're in the center of the United States, so we're in a right spot. We're in the spot for transportation centerness, with the I-70 and I-44, our rail ports, our second and third largest rail hubs in Kansas City and St. Louis. The distribution system is great here. But if you look at the diversity of the terrain and the quality of life you can have from the Ozarks up to Hannibal, down to southeast Missouri, I think that's good. It's an affordable place to live. And I really believe that the qualities that make Missourians who we are is something that other parts of the country really aspire to be like.
You've seen other states that maybe get a little more attention in the news, like Tennessee and Nashville specifically. They become these kind of business destinations. Do you envision a day, particularly if you were governor, where Missouri becomes one of these places that people seek out?
Well, absolutely. And that's one of our key 4 areas that we'll concentrate on should Missourians, I be fortunate enough to receive their vote and become their governor. Our economic development platform, which has been developed in part by Art Laffer, who was Ronald Reagan's tax economist and Donald Trump's tax economist. We have a plan in place that would eliminate Missouri's income tax. And when people say we need to be more like Tennessee or we need to be more like Texas, that's one of the key pieces they use in their opening statement when they're asking companies to expand or move there. That needs to be our opening statement as well. And I've said all the time, Missourians can spend their money way better than any bureaucrat every day of the week, and putting more money into Missourians' pocket and giving us that competitiveness we need for economic development, I think is a key piece to what our administration gets done.
I don't want to speak for you, but you sound like a man who's pretty convicted on these issues in particular because, as I understand it, you come from business yourself, so you understand how that impacts you.
35 years in small business. I've never dreamed of being in politics or wanted to be a politician, to be honest with you. Created with the help of a lot of people and built a very successful manufacturing business that's now U.S.-wide and does exporting out of Lynn, Missouri, emergency vehicles. Automotive sales in central Missouri, several different dealerships in a couple different cities in central Missouri, and then in the ethanol business in Carroll County, in the agricultural end of the business. And then this August, our family will be, my wife and I, 40 years in the cow-calf business. So we are actually producers ourselves. And business is all I know. It's what I'm most comfortable with. And I'm as comfortable talking to a CEO in a boardroom as I am a farmer working on a field on his planter.
I was about to say, I don't know too many people who have both of those backgrounds. You typically hear that one comes from ag or one comes from business and really has to learn the other. You know both.
I have been fortunate to learn both, and with the help of a lot of people again. Like I said, I was one of the youngest dealers on Ford's dealer council and dealt directly with the chairman of Ford Motor Company for several years. And now in my agricultural role in my ag operation and dealing with Missouri family farms, agriculture is our number one industry. I'm just as comfortable working a cow or doing something I need to do on a piece of equipment as I am in that boardroom up in Detroit.
The legislature is super red. It has been for a while now, and you and the governor have presided over that. Yet I think there are probably, it's fair to say, issues that just didn't quite get across the finish line, or maybe aren't quite as aggressive as you'd like to see them. I'm putting words in your mouth, but what do you account for that? I mean, what causes that, do you think, that there are issues that you'd think a ruby red legislature would pass, but maybe didn't get done?
Well, our legislature is an interesting body. It has a lot of personalities. And, as a conservative, number one, I don't want more government, so getting less done some days is very acceptable to me. And in this past session, we had some huge wins. I mean, Senate Bill 727, which is our education reform, is probably the best sweeping reform piece of legislation we've had. I was proud to be a big part of that. Defunding Planned Parenthood was huge, and we got that across the finish line. So there's the 2 or 3 pieces that we did were very significant and very good conservative measures. There's always interesting personalities in both the House and the Senate, and working through those personalities is something that I hope to be able to do. That's one of my strengths, is bringing people together and then finding a conservative solution to move forward.
That's where I was going. I think when you're talking about a governor, there are those that are kind of hands-off or not particularly great with folks, and then there are people that are great at getting people together and figuring out how to make something work, particularly like an issue like school choice. That's been an interesting battle to watch. It's something that I think Republicans are typically associated with being supportive of, and yet I know that's been, and I understand all the issues why, but how do you get folks together in a room on the Republican side, never mind Democrats, and get them to come together on something like that?
Well, on school choice, for one, I've always found that issue interesting because sometimes we forget it's about the child, and all of a sudden the adults start getting very dug in on what they think they need, and this association says this, and this person says this, and all of a sudden I'm sitting there thinking, what about the 5 through 17-year-old that we're trying to produce a great product on the other side? They're our future. They're our workforce development. Those are the people we want to stay in Missouri and grow our population. And so if you can ever get those types of issues that have various contentious points to it, to focus back on what is it that we want to come out of the outcome, you can move the needle. And I would argue, with the help of a lot of people and folks who really worked hard in the legislature this year, that Senate bill we got passed really was some good education reform pieces in it.
Could you see universal school choice happening in Missouri in the future?
Yeah, I think there's the room for the conversation to improve the education system. Definitely has to include that. Look, I'm from North City, St. Louis, a very poor zip code, a very rough zip code, and your zip code should not necessarily determine what type of education you get. And so letting parents and kids have the option to make sure they're going to a school that has their same values. We've had some districts that kind of got far out there on what I think Missouri's conservative Christian values are. And parents shouldn't have to accept that just because where they live. So giving those parents the choice they need for those kids is really important. And at the end of the day, I believe competition raises the level for all ships. And school districts that maybe aren't doing as well are offering some of these non-traditional, I would argue, liberal kind of actions. They'll figure it out when the other districts start doing better. And like I said, a rising tide raises all ships, and I always believe competition is the best thing for business.
It's been interesting just to watch Governor Reynolds to the north and Governor Huckabee Sanders to our south. And I knew it took some wrangling and even some challenging inside their own party, but they ended up going full-blown universal school choice. Could you imagine going that direction?
Oh, yeah. Governor Reynolds is, I know Governor Sanders. I don't know her as well as I know Governor Reynolds. Used to be a lieutenant governor. Her and her current lieutenant governor, Adam Gregg, are good buddies of mine, and she's who I would look to for advice on how to get that next piece through. I think they've done some great things in Iowa. And you know what? At the end of the day, the kids are the ones who are going to benefit from it.
Speaking of neighboring states, I just got to ask you this. Not that you maybe know much about it at this point, but that is the Chiefs and the Royals perhaps hopping over to the state line of Kansas. Kansas has apparently passed some really aggressive, what they call star bonds, to try to lure them over. What does that mean to Missouri, if at all?
Well, Kansas has had some interesting finance proposals in the past that some have not worked as well as they envisioned, and so I hope that's something that those organizations consider. Look, sports franchise, I'm not a fan of sending public dollars to build stadiums, but I am a fan of economic development. And if we had a widget company on the west side of the state that produce the greatest widgets in the world, and they were thinking about moving to another state, whether it's Kansas or one of the other states, we would do everything we could as a community and a state to say, let's keep those employees here, let's keep the economic impact here. And so when it comes to any type of business, whether it's a sports franchise or a manufacturer, I think we have to be on our A game to make sure we do what's right, to make sure the environment's correct. Because I've always said government should never create jobs, but we should have an environment where businesses want to locate here. I think something we talked about earlier, the income tax actions that we talked about, some other things that are on the ballot in November when it comes to sports wagering. There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle that end up affecting that decision. And so we need to put those ideas together to make sure that we keep those franchises here where they belong.
Do you think that more a county responsibility, or do you imagine that if you were governor right now, would you call an emergency session? Do you think the legislature has a place to get involved in this discussion, or no?
I don't think it's something we should call an emergency session for. I think the county and the city, in this case, definitely have to be willing to understand the importance of these businesses, the economic impact that they have on them. Certainly, I think the thing that got the ball rolling for people was the failure of the renewal of the sales tax extension that Jackson County did not renew for maybe some really good reasons. So the length of time, et cetera, had people nervous. So it's time to go back to the drawing board to find out what that they can do together. But everybody has to, put skin in the game to do this. It's been, Republicans have been involved in these conversations before. It was 30 years ago when Governor John Ashcroft put forward a proposal that ended up building the dome down in St. Louis. So this has been something that folks have been involved in for the last several years and decades here in Missouri.
This is considered a conservative state, governed as a conservative state primarily by Republicans. It wasn't too long ago that it was a very purple state, though, right. And there was a Democrat in the governor's mansion. Could that happen again?
I hope not. I really do. I think what's interesting in Missouri, especially, we've been talking a lot of various rural parts that I've been to, and I'm from an urban side of the state, as you know, inner city. So I have kind of a unique perspective on this because I've lived in both for a significant amount of time. In my opinion, we had Democrats in the state that were what we would call conservative Democrats that woke up one day and saw AOC or Cori Bush on TV or something and said, "That's not me." And I think the party ran their own people off. My mother was born and raised a Democrat, and she died a strong Republican. And her famous saying was, "I didn't leave the Democrat Party, they left me."
Finally, if you should become Governor Kehoe, you have maybe a list of 1, 2, 3 top priorities when you hit office.
Right. Crime will be the number one issue. That's why we've received the endorsement of Missouri Fraternal Order Police, the State Highway Patrol Troopers Association, the Peace Officers Association, which is the chief of police, the National Troopers Association, getting crime under control, backing our men and women in blue, getting illegal immigration under control, and protecting our state from the dangerous fentanyl that comes across our borders, charging fentanyl deal with murder. That's what we need to do to strengthen the crime here and give the resources to the people that are protecting our communities. That is the day one, my hand comes off the Bible job we are going to do. Then we can get on to education reform. Then we can get on to economic development. And then we can get on to growing our agriculture. But I can't get to those three things until we get crime under control. And we are going to be the best state in the United States for police officers to work and live here.
Look for the Lieutenant Governor Kehoe bus somewhere in a county near you soon.
It's bus, and we can sign it. You can get a Sharpie out, your inner 6-year-old child that you always wanted to write on the wall and your parents said no. You get to go out and sign the side of the bus. We have thousands of signatures on it, and it's been kind of fun. And that part of the job really invigorates you as you go forward on long days.
Well, Lieutenant Governor, welcome to the western part of the state. Glad to have you here.
Glad to be here, and thank you so much for having me on.